Great careers are not accidents, they're journeys built through clarity and intent. In every industry, there are such journeys that reveal true leadership, sacrifice, risk, and purpose. I'm Dirk, and this is The Pitch and the Catch, where we dive into choices, changes, and the careers they create. Welcome. Today, we go inside the rapidly developing and fast-growing world of solar energy with Alejandro Iza, a systems engineer turned global operator who's built renewable businesses across Uruguay, Europe, and the US. Alejandro is the general manager of Sineng Electric USA, leading a team that's reconstructing how utility-scale solar gets built and managed. He will show us what it takes to grow a multi-million-dollar business in a market hit by a wave of trade barriers. We'll also discover why he believes stability and not subsidies is what will truly drive business performance, and with that, in his case, clean energy growth. From Montevideo to Megawatts, this is a story about adaptability, conviction, and building power systems that can survive uncertainty. Welcome, Alejandro. It is great to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Dirk. It's an honor for me to participate in this show with you.
Wonderful. Hey, let me start with my first question. And I want to go a bit broader in the beginning at first, because solar is such an interesting topic. And I felt like when we prepared, everybody feels like they know something about solar, but maybe they don't. Solar is not a new technology. I remember myself in the 1980s wanting to save the planet and discussing solar farms in the desert with like-minded spirit. We were really convicted that solar is going to save us, and that's 40 years ago. Today, apart from what we are told in the news, which either ignores, demonizes, or praises solar, depending on where the political wind blows. And here's the question: are we already living in the solar age without even realizing it?
Absolutely. We are quite living in the solar age. Solar has transitioned from beginning an alternative to becoming a mainstream component of a global energy infrastructure. So the conversation of today is no longer if solar works, it's how efficiently and at what scale we can deploy it. So you can imagine that from your residential to the commercial farms application or utility scales. So solar is embedded in our energy needs right now. But the real shift is in the mindset, because energy is no longer produced only by utilities. You can produce your own energy. You can sell your extra kilowatt, or you can store as your extra kilowatt to use when the grid is not available. This system has been democratized. So you have the ability right now to stay connected to the grid or work independently, producing your own energy.
For the average consumer, like for you and I, as private people, if we can put solar panels on a roof and we do it properly, we're basically liberating ourselves. So that's what you're saying. So that is one of the great advantages of solar.
Yes. Will depend obviously on the areas, because every country and area have their own specific policy in this matter. But yes, the philosophy of the solar is that you can produce your own energy. In some areas, you can sell to the grid the kilowatt that you're not using, or you can store as to use during the night.
Yes, and I feel like there's two solar business worlds. There's the consumer business world. I put panels on my roof, and I potentially have a storage solution in my garage, like a battery. And then there's the utility side of solar, where we're talking huge solar farms around the world. So I think on the consumer side, this swings back and forth, and there's a lot about government subsidies if you get support, because it's an expensive installation. But I feel like, and maybe you correct me if I'm wrong, the real action happens on the meta end, where governments or huge companies actually build solar farms that deliver enough energy for entire cities.
Yeah. You know that right now, for example, in the US, we are on an emergency in terms of energy. So we have different sources to produce the energy that we need today and the energy that we will need to support our needs in the future. The only source that you can install in less than a year is solar with storage. This is why this market is so important, not only for the US. And we will need more energy that we can produce today. So this is why we need to introduce in our matrix solar plus storage in terms of utility scale. In the prosumer side, as you say, it's a very stable market that has been growing year after year. Very is habituated to see solar panels on the roof, and in some cases, depend of the area, batteries in the garage, as we like to say.
So I just felt inclined to ask, because we're not going so much onto the consumer side. You live in Florida, correct?
Yes,
Do you have solar panels on your roof?
I have solar panels,
Well,
but I don't
I'm
have
lucky
batteries.
it is a yes. Nice. So I think this is something that resonates. We have an emergency in the United
Mhm.
States when it
Yes.
comes to the energy requirements. And this is, for example, driven by the huge AI server farms that are
Mhm.
built at the moment. And a lot of us have felt that in our utility bills because they were going up because energy demand is so high. And I remember this year, I've received as a consumer many warnings from my utility provider that we will run into an energy shortage, this afternoon or on a certain time of the day. So, what you said, solar can be installed in less than a year. So, it's not only a sustainable solution, but it is a very quick and available solution.
Exactly. It's the quickest available solution that we can install right now.
And I remember in the brief, and is it gas turbines? What's if you order a gas turbine today, which is being used in traditional power production? What is
Mhm.
the lead time? When will you receive it if you order it today?
Well, the depend of the manufacturer, but this market is sold out for the next 5 years.
For the next 5 years. So if we felt like we needed new energy from coal, gas, whatever we do, we need the turbines, but there are none we can get in the next 5 years.
No, no. Also, if you decide to install another source of energy like nuclear, hydraulic, and in this case, gas turbine, for nuclear, you will need 10 to 15 years to build up the central. The hydraulic is around 6 to 7 years to install the new turbines. And for gas, probably 6 to 7 years also.
I'm sold. So that's the meta perspective. And probably I understand solar's not going away. Solar's going to grow. Whatever the
Yes.
news are going to tell us, solar will be an important part of the mix. Now, for education purposes, I would be really curious, Alejandro. Everyone knows solar is like the equivalent to solar panels. We've all either seen solar panels on our house, have seen them on neighbors' houses, or
Mhm.
some of us have driven through solar farms somewhere in the desert or anywhere. So we know panels. But now here's my question. You and your company, you're not in the panel business.
No.
So if you'd explain us in layman terms for us,
Yes.
solar is not just the panel. And what does your company do and why is it important?
Well, let's start mention the three aspects of a solar installation. You
Uh-huh.
will need the solar panels, you will need the racking, and you will need the inverter. Solar panels will produce continuous energy, but we need the inverter to transform this energy into a usable energy like we are receiving from the utility.
Mm-hmm.
So what my company do is manufacture, build, and sales inverters. For PV, regular PV, that's mean the inverter that has been connected with the solar panel and the utility grid or local grid at home, and the PCS, the power control systems. So that's a different kind of inverters that have things control only the batteries.
So, and this is me asking, but is the battery part of the inverter?
No, separate.
So you have solar, racking inverter, and batteries in that case.
In this case, if you are using storage, yes.
Okay. Okay. But this
But the storage section is the last addition to this.
from a pure business perspective, which business do you want to be in? In the panels, in the converter? I mean, you're in the inverter, I know, in the
Yes.
inverter business, but where's the most action happening at the moment?
Well, let's say the control.
Oh, interesting. PCS.
Yes. The control of the energy, the control of the storage, the control, the dispatch is probably the most important moving forward in this industry.
Wonderful. Solar is important, and it's always good to offer some, background as to what we're talking about. Let's shift gears. What brought you into solar? What's your connection with solar? Why is that important for you?
Well, I started working in this business 22 years ago because I was always curious about how this called solar panel works. So this is why I'm a start in this industry. And during my career, I've been installing and participating in many projects. But when you arrive at the site without energy, without running water, and you have people and child living there with nothing, and you install a very small system and give a second chance to these people to, send their kid to school, they have a bath with hot water. This change your mind about the solar industry. It's not only install solar farms to sell to the utility scale and earn money. Is to change people.
So that takes us back a step, but because you said change people's lives, now we want to bring solar. So your company doesn't bring solar to individuals; it brings solar to communities, basically.
Well, we have a full range of products. We
Okay.
start on 3 kilowatts. That means very small inverter for residential. And we arrive up to the utility scale. So that means the solutions into a 20-foot or 40-foot containers.
Okay, understood. So I have a generator here, and I
Mhm.
feel like I should have solar panels on my house. We're tree covered. So that generator is 21 kilowatt. It's a whole house generator.
Mhm.
Just to get the scale. So, and I think 21 kilowatt for a house is plenty. So it starts at 3 kilowatt. How much solar energy capacity have you installed in those 22 years?
Good question. Probably if I include all the companies and the projects, more than 20 gigawatt.
Just the scale, 20 giga would power what? Like New York City or not yet?
We'll be close. We'll be close, yeah.
So nice. So in the introduction, I said you started in Uruguay, brought you to the US, brought you to Europe, again to Uruguay. Why all the moves? Tell me a little bit about your story and you said it's 22 years in solar. So how did
Mhm.
the solar world take you through, like physically through the world?
Well, the solar industry is a very active industry. We have every market has faced fluctuations, policy, regulation, supply chain, finance. So this is why move between countries and a continent in this industry, it's not difficult and it's not rare. It's a very, very common activity for the companies to move their employees all around
No,
countries and
yeah,
continents.
absolutely. So, but just because companies can move you around doesn't mean you have to drag your family around the world. So there's a personal motivation behind that.
It is a personal motivation. Initially, when I moved to Europe, was my first experience in solar. I decided to move to Europe because I have double citizenships, Uruguayan and Italian. So I want to live in Italy. So this is why we decided with my wife to move to Europe. And then I started working in this industry in Italy. I started to discover the benefits of solars, what we can provide to the industry and we can provide to the people. And then at some point, one of the company offered me the chance to move again to South America. I'm from South America.
Yes.
So I take this opportunity to say, hey, why not? I've been learning in Europe about this new technology. So why not implement this technology in South America? for my own people, if I can say, right, in South America. This is why I decided to move from Europe to South America again and start developing the area, implementing and explaining what solar is about. And from South America to North America, the company offered me, the chance for, I don't want to say a better job, a better opportunity, right? To
Yes.
continue manage all the Americas in general. And it was a very, very nice opportunity. And this is what I taken and I moved it again from South America.
So I'd love to take that journey step by step. Of course, Italy is known and appreciated for its culture, from food to history and everything. And it's lesser known that Italy, especially the northern part, is an engineering powerhouse.
Mhm.
There's lots of amazing engineering coming out of Italy. I'm curious, going into Italy is not known as a solar powerhouse per se. So what were and you came in because you wanted to live in Italy, so maybe there was a cultural component, but what did Italy teach you that you could bring back to South America?
Well, not only Italy, because after Italy, I moved to Spain. So I spent close to 8 to 10 years in Europe, living between Spain and Italy. And I also have my own company, which is, very different work from somebody else. And when you
Yes.
have your own company,
Yes.
what the market teach me about different solutions, teach me about how to be resilient, teach me about the difference between incentives, subsidies, and sustainable energy, which it was a very nice knowledge because the incentives was very attractive in the beginning in Europe, but when we moved to South America, the incentive was zero. So South America was the first market to start with the solar industry at zero incentive. It was a very, very nice challenge to demonstrate that solar works.
Absolutely. So that implies the answer to my question. Does solar need incentives to be a viable option?
I'm not honestly, I'm not a big fan of the incentives. That's true that they ignite the industry, they help the industry to take off, but resilience sustains them. In renewable, as I said before, every market faces fluctuations, different kind of fluctuation, policy, supply chain, finance. So what differentiates successful leaders at company is the ability to adapt, learn, and stay curious about technology and market evolution. So resiliency turns uncertain into an opportunity. Curiosity drives innovation and continuous improvement. So that's the real competitive advantage, not relying on the external incentives, but on the internal disciplines to evolve faster than the market. So this is
Yes.
why I'm not a big fan of the incentives.
Yeah. So how did you go about that when you returned to South America from Europe and there were no incentives? Did your pitch change? Did you have to convince with data or your personal conviction about solar making it a better world? So how is selling different in an incentivized world versus a non-incentivized world?
I think that the data was the most important because of personal convictions, that's fine for me. But we have investors in the other side that are ready to invest their own money in solar. So the first question is, so that's fine. So explain me why I had to invest my money in this new industry. So data was the most important support to show the people that solar really works. When I arrived, for example, when I moved from Europe to Chile, I started working with the government in Chile. They have a very primitive law about solar. So
Okay.
for them, every single panel on the roof apply for solar. Doesn't matter if it was a photovoltaic panel
Yes.
or a heat panel.
Heat panel. Yeah.
So This is why the data is the most important in these cases, because it is the only proof that you have to show your counterpart, say, hey, this is true. It's really working.
So in terms of data, we don't have enough energy by the year 2030 if we don't use solar. Or let's say, if we don't find alternative sources, let's call it like this. So that's something I've learned from you. Solar can be installed in under a year. And even if we went into alternative sources, it'll take much longer for them.
Yes.
Now, if you're not in an incentivized world, the most important argument is money. So how does solar stack up against other sources? Because the first one was urgency.
Mhm.
And when there's urgency, you go into maybe more expensive solutions because you have to. What imagine gas turbines were be widely available today. Would solar still have a chance from a money perspective?
Yes, yes. You're right. When you're in a need, probably you invest more than what you need. But in
You
this
have to.
case, yeah, you have to because you're in a need, right? But in this case, we prove not only in the US, all around the world, that the solar is cheaper than other sources. So this is why, and as I say, I'm not fan of the incentive because I consider we don't need incentives right now. The technology is mature right now to demonstrate that doesn't need incentives. And it's mature enough to demonstrate that the kilowatt produced by solar is cheaper than any other kilowatt in the industry.
So this I can imagine. So you've spent time in Europe. In Europe, there is this, it's sometimes it's used here. There's the Don Quixote example who fights against the windmills, which is the impossible fight. Running against the windmill is trying to accomplish an impossible task. I feel like you've chosen an industry, and I want to get a little bit back to the person, the leader inside you. It seems like you've chosen an industry where you have to run against the windmills. You have to beat the drum. Now, you have to be a believer in solar to be in there for 22 years and to really want to do this. Um, from you, and you're a believer. I get this. I totally get this. So what could make you more efficient in your leadership approach? Because believing is one, but delivering it is a second thing. It's believing, I believe in that big solution, but you want to create a movement. So as a leader, Alejandro, how do you create the movement? What are the big messages you get out there? How do you get people behind the idea? How do you do the engagement?
Because, yeah, I believe in this industry.
I know.
But the fact is that solar works because I'm already installed multiple systems in different areas under different conditions, and every single one is still working right now. And we change the life of the people that live, for example, in Colombia, in the middle of the jungle. We installed a couple of years ago a small system with batteries, and we provide a second chance to the people. It's not what I believe, it's a fact that this industry works, that solar works. And now we add in batteries. So solar plus batteries for me is the best solution that we can install right now.
Yeah, but now talking about the US, I don't think that's the argument. The argument could be independence, for example. And I think, coming back to your industry, I think we have all the factual arguments about energy needs, faster availability, and ultimately cost. But from what I've learned from you is you need to manage the emotional side of the aspect too. Because solar's been around, and now I'm going full circle to solar's been around for such a long time. And I think there's a ton of innovation in solar. So the solar of the year 2025 is not the solar of the year 1985. And still in the society, the stuff we talk about is nuclear, coal, if we talk about it. So the energy mix is having solar as part of the energy mix, there's always questions around solar. So I feel like the convincing part. And the convincing part also on the emotional side falls much too short still.
Solar right now is stable, is scalable, and sustainable.
Yes.
So how I saw the industry is that the energy must be reliable enough to, for example, replace the traditional generation, not just complement it. Right now, we are complementing the traditional generation, but in the near future, we'll be ready to replace the traditional ones.
Yes.
So that's requiring integrating technology, people, processes into systems that can grow without losing consistency.
Alejandro, probably one of my last questions. So we've touched on a ton of topics. What lessons do you want to leave the listeners with?
Lesson for the industry, let me say that in the industry, the only constant is change. Change in the solutions, change in the innovations, change in the regulations, and change in the activity.
People don't like change, Alejandro.
I know. This is why I fight in every day. We don't want to get outside of comfort zone, right? So every time that we propose a change, the people remain skeptic about this change.
Yes. And how do you win? What's your strategy to win people over? Because they don't like change. So how do you?
Well, the problem is when you propose a change as an idea,
Yep.
okay, the people will say, hey, let me think about it.
Yes.
But when you are proposing a change and shows data and the fact that the thing that you're proposing is a real game changer, I think that something turn in the mind of your customers.
Yes. Okay. So that's the last word. The only constant is change. Is this what we take as a takeaway?
Yes, I think that is what I've been doing for the past 20 years. Try to change the industry. Try to move on needle to the renewable energies to have a
Yeah.
better planet
Yeah.
because it's the only one that we have for now.
And this is where I think you need a believer in there, and you've had the personal stories that made you believe, like you brought energy to communities that were disconnected from the grid, and actually we're bringing communities forward. So let me attempt a summary. So whether it's introducing new technologies or managing your multi-million-dollar operation here in the US, or opening new markets as you've done in South America, I was very impressed with the Uruguay non-incentive experience that you've had. You've built your career on consistency, collaboration, purpose, and I feel like it's on realism.
Yes, sir.
That is what I've learned from you today, realistic expectation. Alejandro, your path was through renewable energy, and infrastructure reminds us that progress doesn't just happen. Progress needs to be driven by leaders. We just talked about the change, and that change is driven by people who stay curious, adaptable, and focus on what truly matters. So I feel like your story demonstrates what it truly takes to scale in a way. And solar is not just about technology, but I bring it back to what you said. It's the first thing you've said. Solar is not just about technology, but it's about the mindset. So that's kind of my takeaway from our conversation today. Does it capture it halfway?
Yeah, I fully agree.
Excellent. Alejandro, I thank you very, very much for your time.